This Thanksgiving, I was explicitly uninvited from my own family's dinner. My stepmother's text was short. Not enough room. 2 hours later, the billionaire grandfather they thought had forgotten me showed up, silver cane in hand, smiling like he knew everything. That night, she slapped me in front of the whole family over a pumpkin pie. And then, as the projector lit up, I flipped the board. My name is Kayla Whitmore. I am 32 years old, and I am the founder of Northline Design and Build. I am a civil engineer by trade, which means I spend my days turning blueprints into tangible structures, arguing about load-bearing capacities, and ensuring that steel and concrete behave the way physics intended. I live in Cedar Hollow, Colorado, not in one of the sprawling Mountain View homes, but in a small, functional rental close to my current job site. Most mornings, I'm awake before the sun, my boots laced tight, my mind already calculating the day's pour schedule. The smell of diesel and curing concrete is more familiar to me than perfume. I build things that are meant to last. My family, on the other hand, seems specialized in erosion. There is my father, Greg Whitmore. He owns a small, respected woodworking shop that smells of cedar shavings and old varnish. He is a man who loves the grain of the wood, but has lost control of the shape of his own life. His wife, my stepmother Evelyn, is the one holding the chisel. She entered our lives 15 years ago and immediately began a systematic renovation, starting with the removal of anything that reminded her of my mother. I was the largest, most inconvenient fixture she had to deal with. Then there is Sierra, my half-sister. She is 25, beautiful, and utterly malleable in Evelyn's hands. Sierra recently married Logan, a man who smiles too wide and works at Hollister and Bright, a local law firm that specializes in structuring family assets for the quietly wealthy of Cedar Hollow. They are a perfect, polished quartet. I am the outlier, the daughter who traded dresses for denim, the one who knows how to operate an excavator. For years, I have been the subject of their backhanded pity at family dinners, the ones I used to be invited to. The conversation always found its way to my failings. "Kayla, honey, all that time in the sun," Evelyn would murmur. "It's going to ruin your skin," Sierra would chime in. "We're just worried you'll never meet someone, always being around. Well, laborers." Logan just watches me, a faint smirk on his face, as if I am a badly constructed argument he could easily dismantle. "It's just not feminine," Evelyn declared to my father last Christmas, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. "She's always covered in dust. She wears that hard hat like a crown. What man wants a woman who can build her own house?" The irony, the deep, biting irony, is that my unfeminine income is the only thing keeping their house standing. They do not know this. They just know that when the roof began leaking 2 winters ago, the problem magically went away. That was $12,000 I wired directly to the roofer. When my father's ancient heating system finally died, I coordinated the replacement and paid the $8,000 invoice. "A contractor discount," I told him, a lie he accepted without question. And when he was hospitalized last year with a gallbladder issue, I covered the copays and the out-of-network surgeon. Another $10,000. I have never sent them a bill. I have never asked for thanks. I just kept paying, repairing the foundation of the family home while they criticized me for having dirt under my fingernails. I ran the numbers last month. The total I have quietly spent on the roof, the boiler, the hospital bills, the property tax shortfalls, is just over $60,000. This year, the subtle digs and quiet insults became a formal decree of exile. It happened in the sterile silence of a text message. I was checking my phone during a break. Scrolling past updates from my concrete supplier, I noticed the group chat I was in. Family Thanksgiving had gone silent. A few minutes later, I saw Sierra post a story on Instagram. It was a selfie of her, Logan, Evelyn, and my father, all beaming. The caption read, "Getting the Thanksgiving core chat finalized. So excited for our perfect family dinner." Thanksgiving core. I was not core. The official notification came 2 days later. Not from my father, but from Evelyn. I was on site, mediating a dispute between my framer and the electrician. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Kayla," the text began. "Just wanted to let you know that we're keeping Thanksgiving very small this year. Sierra and Logan are bringing his parents, and the table is simply too full. We're keeping it to just the immediate core family. I'm sure you understand. We'll catch you at Christmas. Maybe?" The message was surgically precise. Too full. Core family. Maybe? I stood there by the scaffolding, the sound of nail guns echoing in the cold November air. I felt a sudden, sharp coldness that had nothing to do with the weather. I didn't reply. I just stared at the message. I needed to see my father. I drove to his woodshop, telling myself I was just picking up some stain samples. I found him in the back office, Evelyn at his shoulder. I heard her voice before I saw them, low and insistent. "Don't call her, Greg. It's done. She's an adult. She needs to learn to handle disappointment. If you call her, she'll just make a scene. Let her figure it out. It's cleaner this way." My father was silent. He was sanding a piece of maple. His head down, his shoulders slumped. He saw me in the doorway, and his eyes widened, just for a second, with a look of pure, undiluted guilt. Then it vanished. "Kayla," he said, his voice strained. "Everything all right?" "Just checking on those samples," I said. My voice was steady. It's the voice I use when a subcontractor tries to bill me for work they haven't done. I didn't mention the text. I didn't mention the Thanksgiving core. I acted as if I had received nothing, as if I assumed everything was normal. I would not give them the satisfaction of an emotional reaction. They expected tears, or anger, or pleading. I would give them nothing. I went back to my rented house. I did not cry. I made a cup of black coffee and opened my laptop. I pulled up the private, encrypted spreadsheet I've maintained for the last 4 years. The one titled, Whitmore Properties Maintenance. It lists every dollar I've spent on them, the date, the amount, the purpose. October 2nd, 2022, roofer, full replacement, $12,140. January 19th, 2023, HVAC emergency repair, $8,300. July 10th, 2023, St. Jude's Hospital bill, Greg, $10,500. I created a new entry at the bottom, November 2024. I didn't enter a dollar amount. I just typed, exclusion. I sat there, looking at the running total, $60,477. They thought I was the one who was too full for their table. The truth was, I was the one paying for the table, the roof over it, and the heat that kept them warm. My calm was absolute. It was the calm of an engineer who has just identified a critical structural failure. The emotion was gone. Now, it was just a problem to be solved. That calm, that clarity, made me look closer. If they were willing to cut me out this cleanly, what else were they doing? I started with my finances. I am meticulous with my business accounts, but I had let my personal credit card, the one linked to a joint account with my father for emergencies, run on autopilot. I pulled up the statement. The usual charges were there: gas, groceries, software subscriptions, and then I saw it. A charge from 3 weeks ago, $4,820. The vendor, La Belle Cuisine, a high-end kitchen emporium in Denver. I hadn't been to Denver in months. I clicked the transaction details. The invoice popped up, a professional-grade, 12-piece copper-bottom cookware set, a 7-quart artisanal stand mixer, a set of knives that cost more than my first car. The shipping address was the Whitmore family home. The customer name on the order was Evelyn Whitmore. She had used my card, the emergency card. She had used my money, the money I earned wearing a hard hat, to buy herself a brand new kitchen set for the Thanksgiving dinner I was not invited to. This was not an oversight. This was not a mistake. This was theft. It was arrogant, and it was careless. She assumed I wouldn't check. She assumed I was too busy, too distracted, or perhaps just too stupid. I saved the invoice as a PDF. I uploaded it to the same secure cloud drive as my spreadsheet. This was the first piece of hard evidence, the first thread. As I was labeling the file, my phone buzzed again, a number I didn't recognize. The area code was 505, New Mexico. I was too focused on the invoice, on the cold rage solidifying in my veins, and I let it go to voicemail. The caller did not leave a message. I didn't think about the call again for a long time. I was focused on Cedar Hollow. I was focused on the rot. Evelyn had started this 15 years ago. A slow, methodical campaign to isolate me from my father. She saw me as the last remnant of his first life, a threat to her total control. My father, weak and desperate for peace after my mother's death, had let her do it. He had traded his daughter for a quiet life. Evelyn thought her text message was the end of the conversation. She thought the stolen cookware was just a perk. She thought I would spend Thanksgiving alone, feeling sorry for myself. She didn't know me at all. I am a builder. I understand that before you can build something new, you often have to demolish what is already standing, right down to the compromised foundation, and I had just found the first crack. The invoice for the copper pots was the first domino. The next was a faint, metallic click at my front door. It was late, past 10 o'clock at night. I was at my desk, reviewing a structural plan. When I heard it, the sound of my smart lock engaging, I froze. I live alone, and I hadn't touched the door. I walked to the foyer and checked the lock's log on my phone. Locked by user, manual. That was impossible. A chill, entirely separate from the Colorado cold, crept up my spine. This wasn't the first time. Over the past few weeks, I had dismissed it, coming home to find the deadbolt unlocked when I was sure I had locked it. A feeling of unease I'd chalked up to stress. Now, I knew I wasn't imagining it. The next morning, I was at the hardware store before my crew was even on site. I bought a high-definition doorbell camera and a new, heavy-duty, analog deadbolt. I installed them both myself. I changed all my passwords, bank accounts, emails, everything. Someone was testing my security, both physical and digital. Evelyn's casual theft of my credit card number felt less like an isolated incident and more like the opening move of a coordinated campaign. With the new lock in place, I turned my full attention to the digital trail. That $4,800 charge at La Belle Cuisine was a blatant provocation. I went back to the kitchen store's website, logged into the account I didn't even know I had. Apparently, Evelyn had created one using my email, and looked at the order history. There it was, the copper pots, the mixer, the knives, all shipped to her. But then I saw something else. 2 other orders had been placed in the last 6 months, one for a single, expensive espresso machine, the other for a set of German-made steak knives. Both were listed as returned on the same day they were supposedly purchased. The total value of these returns was just under $3,000. Curious, I clicked on the refund details. The money hadn't been returned to my card. It was routed to a completely different account at a regional credit union. The account was a simple checking account, one I didn't recognize, but the refunds were happening after my major contributions to the house. It looked like Evelyn was skimming. She would take my large infusions of cash meant for the roofer or the hospital, then use my card for her own luxuries, and finally cover her tracks by processing fake returns, diverting the refunded money into her own pocket. It was slick, it was calculated, and it was deeply stupid of her to use my email address. I saved every screenshot, every invoice, every transaction ID. I uploaded them all to the new, secure cloud drive I'd created, password protected with a string of data from my first successful engineering project. My investigation was interrupted by a text from Sierra. "Hey, can you swing by Dad's shop? I left my favorite blue sweater there and I need it for tonight." It was a transparent excuse to get me to see them, probably to gauge my reaction to the Thanksgiving snub. Fine, I needed to go to the shop anyway. I needed to see my father. I pulled up to Whitmore Woodworking on a Tuesday afternoon. The smell of sawdust and lacquer hit me, a scent that used to mean comfort and safety. I walked in, not through the front showroom, but through the side door leading to the workshop. I could hear voices from my father's small office. I paused just outside the door, which was slightly ajar. It was Sierra, her voice high and animated. "No, Logan said it's perfect," she was saying, clearly on her phone. "We just have to wait. After Thanksgiving, we'll get her to sign the rest of the papers, and it's done. Yes, all of it. It'll be completely clean." A cold pit opened in my stomach. Get her to sign. Who was her? Evelyn or someone else? I pushed the door open, forcing a neutral expression. Sierra was perched on the edge of my father's desk, phone pressed to her ear. She saw me. Her eyes widened in panic, and she immediately hung up. "Kayla, you scared me," she laughed, a high false sound. "Just talking to a girlfriend about, wedding follow-ups. So much paperwork." "Right," I said, my voice flat. "Your sweater?" "Oh, yes." She hopped off the desk and grabbed a blue knit lump from the chair. "You're a lifesaver." Evelyn emerged from the back, where the finishing room was. She was wiping her hands on an apron, but she looked as out of place in a woodshop as a diamond in a toolbox. "Kayla, what a surprise," she said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just grabbing Sierra's sweater," I replied, pointing. My father was at his workbench, his back to me. He was planing a piece of oak, the rhythmic shh-shh of the tool the only honest sound in the room. He didn't turn around. "Dad?" I said. He stopped. He set the plane down carefully, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the bench. He turned, sawdust clinging to his flannel shirt. "Kayla, good to see you," he said, but the words were heavy, obligatory. "Are you all right, Dad? You seem busy," Evelyn cut in, stepping between us. "We're buried in orders for the holidays. In fact, Greg, you need to call that supplier in Boulder before they close." She turned to the large, old-fashioned metal safe in the corner of the office. She spun the dial with practiced ease, opened it, and pulled out a ledger. "And your schedule shows a pickup at 4. I watched her. She handled the safe, the ledger, and my father's schedule as if they were her own. My father, the owner, the master craftsman, just stood there, looking at his hands. Evelyn was no longer just his wife. She was his administrator, his controller. Just then, the front bell jingled, and Logan walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. He beamed when he saw the group. "Perfect, the whole family," he announced, kissing Sierra. "Greg, Evelyn, just the people I wanted to see. Kayla, good to see you too. Taking a day off from the construction site?" "Just running an errand," I said. "Good, good." He opened his briefcase on the desk, pushing aside a stack of wood invoices. He pulled out a sheaf of documents, bound in a neat blue cover. "Greg, I've got the final draft of that asset restructuring I mentioned. This is going to save us a fortune in taxes. Just a standard optimization. I've marked all the signature pages. We can get this done right now." He slid the documents toward my father, offering a sleek, silver pen. My father stared at the papers as if they were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "Restructuring?" I asked, my voice cutting through the air. "What assets are you restructuring, Logan?" Logan's smile tightened. "Just family assets. Kayla, the shop, the house, standard estate planning. It's all about ensuring the family legacy is protected." "Legacy," I repeated. "It's just miscellaneous paperwork, Kayla," my father mumbled, finally speaking. He wouldn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the oak board on his bench. "Logan is handling it. It's fine." "Dad, you shouldn't sign anything without having your own counsel review it," I said, looking directly at Logan. Logan let out a short, patronizing laugh. "I am his counsel, Kayla, and his son-in-law. I think I have his best interests at heart. This is all just boring legal stuff, way above your pay grade. No offense. Stick to your 2x4s. The casual, dismissive arrogance of it almost made me react, but I remembered my new rule: no emotion, only data. "I need to get back to the site," I said. I turned to my father. "Dad, call me later, please." He nodded, but he still wouldn't meet my gaze. I walked out. the shh of his hand plane starting up again before the door had even clicked shut. I sat in my truck for a full 5 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel. After Thanksgiving, we'll get her to sign the rest of the papers, and it's done. Sierra's words echoed in my head. They weren't talking about wedding paperwork. They were talking about my father's assets, the shop, the house, my mother's house. This was beyond stolen cookware. This was a coup. I drove straight to my office, a small, leased space above a coffee shop. I closed the door, pulled down the blinds, and made a call. Maura Hale, Forensic Accounting. Ms. Hale, I said, my voice steady. My name is Kayla Whitmore. I'm calling about a personal matter. I suspect significant financial impropriety within my family's assets, and I need a full audit of all transactions for the last 18 months. Maura Hale was a legend in Denver. She was a quiet, ruthless woman in her 50s who could find a single fraudulent cent in a mountain of receipts. We met the next day. I gave her everything. My spreadsheet of contributions, the La Belle Cuisine invoices, the refund account number, and my suspicions about Logan and the asset restructuring. She listened, her face impassive, just nodding. I'll need read-only access to your father's business accounts and your personal accounts that you used for the house payments, she said. This will take a few days. The wait was agonizing. I threw myself into my work, signing off on rebar placements, negotiating with concrete suppliers, and walking my job sites until my legs ached. I needed the physical exhaustion to quiet my mind. 3 days later, Maura called me. You need to come to my office, Ms. Whitmore, now, and you need to sit down. Maura's office was sterile and white. She had a single screen on her desk. When I sat down, she turned it to face me. Your instincts were correct, she said, but you were looking at the wrong bucket. She pulled up a flowchart. It was a tangle of arrows and account numbers. You paid the roofer, she said, pointing to a transaction from my account. But the roofer didn't get that money directly. Your $60,000 in housing and medical payments over the last 18 months were not, in fact, paid directly to the vendors. What? I have the cleared checks. You do, Maura said. You paid them, but on the same day you paid them, an identical amount was refunded from your father's business account, citing overpayment. That refund, however, didn't go back to you. It was routed. Her finger traced a line. My money went in. The vendor was paid. Then, an expense was created in the shop's books, and a payment was made. Where did it go? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Maura clicked, and a new box appeared on the screen. It was all funneled, every dollar, into a single holding company, a shell corporation registered in Delaware. It's called Birch Vista LLC. Birch Vista. The name was meaningless to me. Who owns it? Maura clicked again. The articles of incorporation appeared. It was formed 2 years ago. The registered agent is a generic service, but the authorized owner, the only person with signature authority on the account, is Evelyn Whitmore. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just skimming. It wasn't just theft. It was a long-term, systematic replacement of my capital. She was taking my money, the money I gave to save my father's house, and diverting it into her own private company. She was using my generosity to build her own nest egg, all while she kicked me out of the family. She's been bleeding my father's business dry, I said, the words tasting like ash, and using my money to do it. She's been replacing the equity, Maura corrected me. She takes your money, pays the bill, then expenses the shop for the same amount, moving that cash into Birch Vista. On paper, it looks like the shop is paying its own bills, but in reality, you are its sole financier, and Evelyn is its sole beneficiary. She's effectively laundered over $60,000 of your money into her own name. I stood up and walked to the window. The Denver skyline was sharp against the blue. I felt sick. I need every document, I said. Everything. The wire transfers, the incorporation papers, everything. It's already being uploaded to your secure drive, Maura said. Kayla, this is grand larceny. This is a criminal case. Not yet, I said. It's a leverage case. Thank you. Maura, Send me your bill. I went home and opened the cloud drive. The Birch Vista LLC file was there. I downloaded every page, my mind working like an engineer's. This was the foundation of their entire plan, and I was about to set the demolition charges. As I was organizing the files, a new email notification popped up. It wasn't addressed to me. It was a forwarded message, sent by a disgruntled secretary at Hollister and Bright, who I'd once helped get her son a summer job on my crew. The secretary had just quit, and this was her parting gift. It was a chain between Logan and Sierra. My name was in the subject line, but my eyes locked on the last message in the thread, sent from Logan's phone to Sierra just 2 days ago. It's all set. The restructuring consolidates the house and the shop under the new trust. Your mother is the primary administrator. We just need your dad to sign the final transfer agreement before the old man shows up. Once it's signed, Kayla is locked out for good. She can't touch it. The old man. My grandfather. We never talked about him, Archer Whitmore. He was a ghost, a myth, my father's father. They had a falling out years ago, and his name became forbidden in the house, especially after Evelyn arrived. They were rushing. They were trying to get this done, because my grandfather was coming, and for the first time in a decade, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't rage or disappointment. It was hope. Logan's email was the pivot point. Before the old man shows up, he wasn't just a threat, he was a deadline. Archer Whitmore. The name felt foreign in my mind, like a language I had not spoken in 14 years, in the house I grew up in. Evelyn had made my grandfather a taboo topic. He was the ghost at the feast, the wealthy relative who had disowned us, the great family failure, or perhaps, the great family success they couldn't control. I remembered him clearly, before Evelyn, before the silence. My mother, his daughter-in-law, had adored him. He adored her, and when I was a child, I was his project, his little engineer. My mother died when I was 12. It was a brutal, swift erasure by cancer. My father, Greg, was a man who needed an anchor, and his was suddenly gone. He was adrift in a sea of grief, and he was terrified of drowning. 6 months later, Evelyn appeared. She was vibrant, decisive, and offered him a simple, easy shore. My father, desperate, swam for it. Archer Whitmore saw the remarriage not as healing, but as a desecration, a replacement. He came to the house, one last time. He was a tall man, radiating a dry, kinetic energy, like a desert storm. Evelyn was already in the living room, holding a paint swatch to the wall. Greg, this is an insult to her memory. Archer's voice was not loud, but it filled the room. Dad, I'm lonely, my father pleaded, his voice small. The house is empty. So you filled it with an opportunist, Archer stated. It was not an accusation, it was a structural assessment. Evelyn, sensing the challenge, placed a proprietary hand on my father's arm. I will not be spoken to this way in my new home. It is not your home, Archer replied, his eyes like ice. Not yet. He left. He never returned, and Evelyn began her systematic campaign to paint him as the villain, the cold-hearted father who abandoned his grieving son. The truth was, Archer was a pioneer. He wasn't a humble woodworker. He was a serious, formidable investor in renewable energy. He saw the future in the wind that scoured the high plains. He lived in Santa Fe Mesa, a sprawling, solar-powered compound he had designed himself, and he ran his empire from the desert. For a few years, he tried to maintain contact with me. He sent me books on physics, miniature models of wind turbines, letters encouraging my interest in math. You have your mother's mind, Kayla, he wrote. Don't let them dull it. Then, when I was 18, I went to visit him. I was full of college-bound righteousness. He had, in my opinion, been unfair to my father. He criticized Greg's weakness. He is letting that woman hollow him out, Archer said, sipping coffee on his sun-drenched patio. He is a fool, and he is teaching you to accept weakness. I defended my father. I was still loyal to the man who was disappearing. You don't understand. It's hard for him. You abandoned him. It is harder to watch, Archer said. You cannot build a strong life on a weak foundation. He is compromised. We argued. I called him cold, unforgiving. I said he understood structures but not people. I left Santa Fe the next morning, and I did not call him again. The silence stretched from a month to a year to a decade. Evelyn watered that silence like a prized garden. She made him the bogeyman. When rumors trickled in from business journals that Archer had sold a massive portfolio of his wind farm shares, that his net worth had jumped from simply wealthy to something astronomical, Evelyn was quick to manage the narrative. Don't even think about it, Greg, I overheard her saying one night, her voice sharp. Old men like that are fickle. He's probably left it all to a desert tortoise sanctuary. There is nothing for us there. We have to make our own way. She was insulating my father from his own family, ensuring that she and Sierra were his only support, his only future. My father, trapped, simply stopped. He was wedged between the love for his daughter, the memory of his first wife, and the overwhelming daily pressure of his new one. He chose the path of least resistance. He chose silence. He let Evelyn manage the books, the schedule, and eventually, the relationships. His silence was his consent. It was the weakness Archer had warned me about, the compromised foundation. This history, this context, turned my anger into a cold, hard clarity. Evelyn's text message, "Not enough room," was not a social snub. It was the final move in a 15-year campaign. They were isolating me, cutting me off from the family unit, just before they executed the final transfer of assets. They were making sure I was on the outside when they locked the doors for good. I stood in my kitchen and realized, with a sudden, sharp certainty, that I did not want an invitation. I was not going to call my father and plead. I was not going to show up with a store-bought pie and beg for a seat at the table that I had paid to heat. Being a supplemental guest was not the goal. The goal was the truth. The goal was the foundation. I called Maura Hale. I need to see the trust Logan is building, I said. I need to know its architecture. I'm already in. Maura's voice was grim. She had used the information from the forwarded email to search the county registries. He filed the trust declaration last week. I'm looking at the flowchart now. She sent me the file. It was exactly what Logan had boasted about, a living trust. It's a standard-issue asset protection vehicle, Maura explained over the phone. But the beneficiary structure is hostile. Your father's assets, the shop, the house, his personal savings, are being systematically transferred into this new trust. The primary administrator, with full discretionary control over all assets and distributions, is Evelyn Whitmore. The secondary administrator and sole beneficiary upon Evelyn's death is Sierra. You, she paused, and I could hear her click her mouse, are not listed. You are not a beneficiary. You are not mentioned by name. You have been legally and financially erased. This was it. The rest of the papers Sierra mentioned on the phone. This was the document Logan was pressuring my father to sign. They were taking my mother's house. They're taking everything, I said, the words hollow. They're taking everything, Maura confirmed, and they've been using your $60,000 in maintenance payments to fund Evelyn's personal LLC, Birch Vista, ensuring she has liquid capital while the estate's assets are in flux. Can they do this? If Greg signs it, yes, it's his property. He can leave it to whomever he wants. Even if he's being manipulated, even if they're stealing from me at the same time? That, Maura said, is a much more complicated question. That's undue influence, and it's incredibly hard to prove. You need a different kind of lawyer. But first, I had to create a legal record. I had to throw a wrench into the gears. I sat at my computer and drafted a formal letter. I stripped all emotion from it. It was a clinical, precise document. To Greg Whitmore and Evelyn Whitmore, it began. This letter serves as a formal reservation of rights regarding financial contributions made by Kayla Whitmore for the maintenance, repair, and medical support of the Whitmore household and business, totaling $60,477 from October 2022 to the present date. I listed the major expenses: the roof, the boiler, the hospital bills, the property tax shortfalls. I attached Maura's one-page summary of the cash flow. I concluded, these funds were provided under specific, if informal, pretenses of family support. Given the current circumstances, I am now formally registering my financial interest in these assets. I require a full accounting and a mutually agreed-upon repayment plan within 30 days. It was not a loan agreement. It was not a lawsuit. It was a formal notice. It was an anchor. It transformed my $60,000 from a gift into a debt. It was a legal liability that I had just attached to the very assets they were trying to move into their protected trust. I sent it via certified mail. Return receipt requested. Someone would have to sign for it. They would not be able to claim ignorance. Maura called me after I told her the letter was sent. "This is good," she said. "This complicates their asset transfer significantly, but I think there's something else. A trust like this, signed this late in life, it almost always accompanies a new will. Greg must have had one before." I remembered. He did. My mother and father had drafted mirror wills when I was a child. Standard and simple. Everything went to the surviving spouse. And then, upon that spouse's death, everything went to me. Evelyn would have made him change it, I said. The realization was heavy. Almost certainly, Maura agreed. That original will, the one naming you as the sole heir, is probably in a filing cabinet, replaced by a new one that mirrors the trust. They are systematically replacing the original foundation of your inheritance with their own design. Maura Hale was an accountant. I needed a demolition expert. Her recommendation was specific. Atticus Vale. He specializes in high-conflict asset disputes. He's expensive, he's theatrical, but he does not lose. Atticus Vale's office was on the top floor of a glass building in Denver. It was stark, modern, and offered a commanding view of the mountains. He was a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit, and he listened to my entire story without a single interruption. He reviewed Maura's flowcharts, my $60,000 spreadsheet, and the certified letter I had sent. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a sleek, silver pen against his desk. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, his voice smooth and precise, "you have a fascinating, multi-layered problem. You have clean-cut fraud via Birch Vista LLC. You have a provable breach of fiduciary duty. You have potential undue influence, which is messy, and you have a stepmother who is, to put it mildly, fantastically greedy." "I have a family that's trying to erase me," I said. "Yes," he nodded, "and they are rushing. They are rushing because your grandfather is in play. They know he is a potential source of power for you, and they are trying to lock the gates before his arrival." "So what do we do? File an injunction? Sue for the $60,000? Atticus smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who has just seen a weakness in the pack. "No, we do not yet." He steepled his fingers. "Right now, Ms. Whitmore, they expect you to be angry. They expect you to be emotional. They expect a frantic, desperate lawsuit from the scorned daughter, Logan, as their counsel, is prepared for that. He will file motions. He will delay. He will paint you as bitter and ungrateful, trying to claw back money you freely gave as a gift. So I do nothing?" The thought was intolerable. You do nothing until they are at their most vulnerable, until they are comfortable, arrogant, and actively celebrating their victory. You do not strike when your opponent is on guard, with their lawyer present and their defenses up. You strike when they are in their own home, full of turkey and wine, surrounded by their allies, with their guard completely down. I stared at him. I understood. "You want to do this on Thanksgiving," I said. Atticus's smile widened. "I don't want to. They have chosen the stage. They have built the set. They have invited the audience, and they have planned the entire play. which ends with your father signing away your inheritance. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. All we have to do, he said, is rewrite the final act. Go home. Ms. Whitmore, prepare your evidence. Be ready. When the time comes, you will not be a victim seeking sympathy. You will be an engineer, presenting her findings. Atticus Vale had given me a stage. I was an engineer. I would wire it for a controlled demolition. The first step was surveillance. My father's house, my mother's house, was old. The dining room chandelier was an ornate, dusty thing Evelyn had never bothered to replace. It was also, conveniently, directly above the dining table, where my father would be pressured to sign his life away. I bought a voice-activated microphone, no bigger than a quarter, with a battery life of 72 hours. It was designed for conference room transcription. I told my father I was coming by to drop off an old sweater he'd left at my place months ago. The blue one Sierra had conveniently needed was back in her possession. I went on a Monday, midday, when I knew Evelyn would be at her salon appointment and my father would be at the shop. I let myself in with my old key, the one Evelyn didn't know I still had. The house was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of Evelyn's expensive, cloying perfume. It took me less than 10 minutes. I stood on a dining chair, unscrewed the decorative base of the chandelier, and nestled the microphone deep inside, among the ancient wiring. I switched it on. It would capture every whisper, every toast, every casual admission, every pressured signature. Step 2 was the payload. I spent 2 nights locked in my office, not building a structure, but dismantling one. I took all of Maura's data, all the screenshots from the La Belle Cuisine website, and the forwarded emails from Logan, and I built a presentation. It was not emotional. It was a kill shot, delivered in corporate keynote format. Slide 1. The La Belle Cuisine invoices. My name, my credit card, Evelyn's shipping address, a $4,800 charge for copper pots. Slide 2. The fraudulent refunds, the $3,000 diverted to Evelyn's secret credit union account. Slide 3. The Birch Vista LLC flowchart, a simple, brutal diagram showing $60,000 moving from my account, paying for the roof and the furnace, and an identical amount being expensed from the wood shop and funneled directly into Evelyn's shell company. Slide 4. The email from Logan to Sierra. The specific quote, highlighted in red. Once it's signed, Kayla is locked out for good. Slide 5. The new discovery. Maura had kept digging. She found a $25,000 payment from Logan's law firm, Hollister and Bright, to Birch Vista LLC. The invoice memo was vague. Consulting services rendered. It was a kickback. Logan wasn't just helping his mother-in-law. He was her partner. He was paying himself, or rather, paying Evelyn, from my father's assets for the service of stealing my father's assets. This was the evidence. I needed to protect it. I saved the presentation to 3 separate, encrypted locations, one in my secure cloud, one on a hard drive I kept in my office safe, and one on a micro USB drive. I clicked the small drive into a waterproof, shockproof casing. I took it to my truck, opened my heavy-duty field toolbox, and tucked the drive into a hidden compartment beneath the tray. Its password was a simple, unbreakable 8-digit code, the month, day, and year of my mother's death. Now that my evidence was secure, I needed to track theirs. I knew from Sierra's phone call and Logan's email that they had a box of papers, the rest of the papers, the final trust documents, the new will, the signature pages my father was supposed to sign. They would be moving them, finalizing them before the holiday. I went back to the house, this time in the evening, using the same sweater excuse. I'd forgotten another one. My father was home, sitting in his recliner, the television on but muted. He looked exhausted. "Kayla," he said, startled. "Evelyn's not here." "I know. Dad, I just left this in the laundry room." I was carrying a small, folded bag. Sierra said she had a box of wedding papers. She was organizing in the office. I didn't want to get them mixed up. "Oh, yes, in the study," he mumbled, turning back to the silent TV. I walked into the small room my father once used as a den, now converted into Evelyn's command center, and there it was, a standard, legal-sized cardboard file box, sitting by the desk. It was marked Whitmore Trust, 2024. My hands were steady. From my pocket, I took a simple white disc, an AirTag. I peeled off the adhesive backing I'd attached, leaned over the box as if I were just looking at the label, and slipped my hand inside the open top. I pressed the tag firmly to the inside, cardboard wall, underneath a thick manila folder labeled Property Deeds. I left the house 5 minutes later. I sat in my truck, parked a block away, and watched the tracker on my phone. The box didn't move for 2 hours. I went home, showered, and tried to sleep. At 9:17 in the evening, my phone pinged. Whitmore Trust is now at Hollister and Bright, 1400 Main Street. Sierra or Logan had picked up the box and taken it to the law firm. They were preparing it for the final signing. They were moving the evidence. I called Atticus immediately. "They're moving the files. Atticus, the trust box is at Logan's office right now. 9:17 at night, 2 days before Thanksgiving." There was a pause on the line. I could hear him smile. "He's tampering," Atticus said, his voice alive with predatory energy. "He's moving the original will. He's altering the chain of custody. He just gave us our opening." "What do we do?" "I am, as we speak, drafting an ex parte motion for an emergency preservation order. I'm citing suspected document spoliation based on a reliable confidential informant. A judge will sign it by morning. They are now legally obligated not to destroy, alter, or move a single one of those documents. He's trapped himself in his own office." While Atticus set the legal snare, I worked on the stagecraft. I needed an audience. Evelyn was inviting her own allies. I needed witnesses. I called Mary and David Thompson. They were my father's oldest friends, our next-door neighbors for 20 years. Long before Evelyn, they had watched me grow up. They had mourned my mother with us. Evelyn had systematically pushed them away, calling them nosy and common. "Mary," I said, "it's Kayla Whitmore." "Kayla, honey, we never see you. How are you?" "I'm okay, Mary. I'm calling to ask a huge favor. It's about my dad. I'm worried about him. I know this is strange, but I was wondering if you and David could come to dinner on Thanksgiving, at Dad's house." There was a silence. "Kayla, dear, I don't think Evelyn would—" "I know," I cut in. "That's why I'm asking you to come, as my guests, to help in the kitchen. Evelyn is overwhelmed, and I told her I would arrange for some help so she could enjoy the party." It was a blatant lie, but Mary understood the subtext. "You're worried about Greg," she said, her voice serious now. "We are too. He doesn't look well. We'll be there. 4 o'clock sharp. We'll bring our best aprons." Witnesses, secured. Next, the technology. The presentation was on my USB drive. I needed a way to display it. I knew from my last visit that Evelyn had insisted on a brand new 72-inch television in the dining room, connected to an Apple TV. She loved showing off Sierra's wedding photos during dinners. That Apple TV was connected to the home's Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi password I had personally set up for my father 5 years ago. The password Evelyn had never bothered to change. From my own living room, I logged into their home network. I gained access to their Apple account. I quietly configured the Apple TV to accept screen mirroring from any device on the network. No password required. The projector was now aimed and loaded. I felt like I was back on my first major job site, the night before a complex concrete pour. All the rebar was tied, all the forms were braced, all the safety checks were complete. There was only one variable left: Archer. My grandfather, the old man who was Logan's deadline. I had no idea if he was even coming. They were scared of him, but I hadn't spoken to him in 14 years. What if he didn't show? I couldn't count on it. I had to build my own plan. But I could send up a flare. I bought a bus ticket, a one-way ticket from Cedar Hollow to Santa Fe. Leaving Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. I paid for it in cash at the depot. I let the ticket sit on my passenger seat for a full day, where anyone looking in my truck might see it. Then, I went to a courier service. I prepared a simple 9 by 12-inch manila envelope. Inside, I placed one thing, a copy of the Birch Vista LLC Incorporation document, with Evelyn's name as the sole owner. I didn't include a letter. I didn't include an explanation. He was a smart man. He would understand the architecture. I addressed the package to the only address I ever knew for him. Archer Whitmore, Santa Fe Mesa. I did not go to Santa Fe. I voided the bus ticket. I stayed in Cedar Hollow. The trap was set. The invitations were out. Evelyn, oblivious, was busy. I saw the delivery truck outside her house, a massive, pre-cooked catering order, and then a separate, smaller box from La Belle Cuisine. I smiled. It was the pumpkin pie, the handmade pie she would take credit for, the pie she probably paid for with the last dregs of my stolen $60,000. It was all falling into place. Thanksgiving morning started in the silence of the cemetery. The air was sharp, smelling of iron and damp earth. I stood in front of my mother's headstone, a simple granite marker that I kept clean myself. I placed the small bouquet of white chrysanthemums, her favorite, at the base. "They're trying to take the house. Mom," I whispered into the cold air. "Your house." I had spent my entire adult life trying to prove I was strong enough, trying to hold together the crumbling foundations of the family my father had let decay. I had poured money into that house, not just for him, but for her, for this memory, and they were, piece by piece, stealing it, all while calling me unworthy of a seat at the table. I stayed until the cold seeped through my gloves. I felt no sadness, only a profound structural clarity. The objective was clear. I didn't go home. I went to the job site. My crew had the day off, but the skeleton of the new Cedar Hollow Library stood against the gray sky, a monument of steel and potential. I climbed the scaffolding to the third floor. My hard hat clicked firmly in place. This was my world, cause and effect, load and capacity. You couldn't lie to concrete. It would expose you every time. I pulled out my phone. The digital stage was already set. Sierra had posted on Instagram a bright, filtered photo of her, Logan, Evelyn, and my father, all of them wearing coordinated beige sweaters, smiling in front of the fireplace. The caption was nauseating. "Thankful for my amazing, perfect family. Getting ready for the best Thanksgiving ever. So blessed. Thanksgiving Corf saw family first blessed." She had tagged everyone, Evelyn, Logan, my father, even Logan's parents, everyone except me. I was not core. I was the peripheral element they had successfully shaved off. I saved the screenshot. It was another piece of the presentation. Then, at 9:30, a new text message from Evelyn. "Just to be clear, Kayla, we meant what we said. We are full. Please do not show up and make things awkward for your father. Do not ruin the atmosphere. Do not ruin the atmosphere. The atmosphere I had paid to heat. The atmosphere under the roof I had paid to replace. The audacity was breathtaking. It was the final, formal nail. They were not just excluding me. They were issuing a restraining order. I saved that screenshot too. I sat in the cab of my truck, the engine off, the silence of the construction site absolute. It was time to listen. I put in my wireless earbuds and opened the secure app connected to the microphone in the chandelier. At first, it was just muffled sounds, clanging pots, my copper pots, Evelyn, humming out of tune. Then, the murmur of conversation. I skipped ahead, listening in bursts. I worked on revised supply manifests on my laptop, the audio feed a quiet hum in my ears. I heard Logan's parents arrive, their voices booming and privileged. I heard Sierra laugh, a high, thin sound. At exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard what I was waiting for. "Greg." Logan's voice, smooth, persuasive. "Before we get the appetizers out, let's just sign this last packet. We can get the notary, who is waiting just outside, to stamp it. And we're done, clean and simple. A rustle of papers, my father's voice, weak and shaky. Right now? Logan? The guests are here. It'll take 2 minutes. It's just the final transfer authorization for the trust. The optimization we talked about. My hand is shaking, my father mumbled. I could hear the tremor in his voice. I don't feel right about doing it right now. Can it wait? Let's just have one nice meal, please. After dinner, I promise. There was a long, cold silence. I could picture Logan's smile tightening, the mask slipping. Fine, Greg, he said. His voice clipped. After dinner, with the coffee. But we must get it done tonight. You know how important the timing is. My father had delayed. The weak foundation had held. Just for a few more hours. He had just moved the execution from 3 o'clock to 8. He had, without knowing it, pushed their entire plan directly into my kill box. At 4 o'clock precisely, I heard the doorbell ring on the audio feed. I heard Evelyn's footsteps. The door opened. Mary! David! Evelyn's voice was a catastrophe of false surprise. What on earth are you two doing here? Hello, Evelyn. Mary Thompson's voice was strong, cheerful, and neighborly. Kayla was so worried you were swamped with all this cooking. Dear, she sent us over to lend a hand. She's always so thoughtful, isn't she? We brought our best aprons. Another strained silence. Evelyn was trapped. She couldn't turn away her oldest neighbors, not in front of Logan's parents. Yes, Evelyn said, her voice like grinding glass. Always? So thoughtful? Well, come in. Then, the kitchen is this way. My witnesses were inside. I let the feed run. I heard Mary and David being graciously deflected from the main kitchen, where the catered food was clearly being unwrapped, and put on appetizer duty in the dining room. And then, I heard Mary's voice, close to the chandelier. My goodness, Evelyn, she said, did you make that pumpkin pie? It's absolutely perfect. It looks like it came from La Belle Cuisine. Evelyn's laugh, loud and proud. Oh, this old thing? It's just an old family recipe. You know how I love to bake from scratch. It's the only way, really. I looked at the invoice PDF on my laptop. One artisanal pumpkin pie. $95, paid by me. The lie. Captured. The final piece clicked into place 20 minutes later. The ambient sound of the dining room died down as people moved to the living room. I heard 2 people stop directly under the chandelier, under my microphone. Evelyn and Logan. Their voices were low, conspiratorial. He's putting it off, Evelyn hissed. He's weak. What if he backs out? He won't, Logan said, his voice a cold whisper. He's just sentimental. He'll sign. He's cornered. After dinner, I'll bring out the signature pages with the dessert. He'll sign it right at the table, in front of everyone. It will look like a celebration. Good, Evelyn said, because as soon as he signs, we change the locks. I want her key to be useless by midnight. I want this done. I clicked the save clip button. I closed my laptop. My heart was not racing. It was slow, steady, a diesel engine, ready to do the heavy work. My phone vibrated. A text message from Atticus Vale. I am in position, 2 blocks away. The emergency preservation order is active and filed. You are green lit. Go when you are ready. I looked at the clock on my dashboard. 5:36 in the evening. It was time. I did not drive to the house. I parked my truck 3 streets over and walked. The November air was biting, and it felt good. It kept me sharp. I walked past the houses of my childhood. The smell of roasting turkey and burning wood in the air. I turned the final corner. My mother's house was blazing with light. Every window lit. It looked warm, festive, a perfect picture. I walked up the stone path, the same path I had walked 10,000 times. My hand went into my pocket, my fingers closing around the cold, metal-cased USB drive. I was an engineer. I was not here to plead. I was here to present a structural integrity report. I reached the bottom step of the wide, columned porch. I was about to step up, to ring the bell that Evelyn had forbidden me to touch. A car door slammed shut at the curb behind me. I turned. A long black sedan, the kind that whispers of serious money, was parked there. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was silhouetted by the streetlight, tall and lean. He moved with a deliberate, unhurried pace, and then the sound hit me, sharp and distinct in the cold air. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of a cane on the pavement. He walked into the light of the porch, and I stopped breathing. I had not seen him in 14 years. He was older, his hair a shock of pure white, but his eyes were exactly the same. They were not the soft, hazy blue of my father's. They were the color of a winter sky, sharp and clear and cold. Archer Whitmore. He stopped directly beside me on the walkway. He was holding a heavy, burnished metal briefcase in his left hand, the silver-headed cane in his right. He looked at the house, blazing with light. Then he looked at me. He surveyed me from my work boots to my tense shoulders. A flicker of something, not recognition, but confirmation, passed through his eyes. I didn't know what to say. "Grandfather?" He nodded once, a sharp, bird-like motion. I turned back to the door. My resolve hardened. I was not alone. I stepped onto the porch and pressed the illuminated doorbell. We waited. The sound of laughter and music echoed from inside. Then, footsteps. The door swung open. Evelyn stood there. She was wearing a new, dark red dress. A champagne flute was in her hand. Her face was flushed with victory and wine, her smile wide, ready to greet whatever guest had arrived. The smile did not fade. It shattered. Her eyes went from me, the uninvited, the filth on her doorstep, to the man standing beside me. Her face went slack. The color drained from it, leaving a sallow, pale shock. The champagne flute tilted in her hand. "Archer," she breathed. It wasn't a greeting. It landed like a curse. She was trapped. Logan's parents were in the living room. Mary and David were in the kitchen. She could not slam the door. She could not scream at me. She was pinned by the arrival of the one man she could not control. "Archer," she stammered, attempting a smile that looked more like a grimace. What a complete surprise. We had no idea. "Please, come in. We have plenty of room." The lie was so blatant, so desperate. It hung in the air between us. Archer Whitmore did not move. He did not smile. He looked at Evelyn's panicked face. He looked at the garish decorations in the hallway behind her. Then he looked at me. He stepped back, a small, deliberate motion, and gestured with his cane toward the open door, holding it for me, an invitation. I walked past Evelyn, who looked as if she had just swallowed poison, and stepped into the foyer of my mother's house. Archer followed, planting his cane firmly on the hardwood floor. He ignored Evelyn completely. He leaned in, his voice low, dry, and meant only for my ears. I arrived just in time. The tension at the table was so thick it was suffocating. My father's house, my mother's house, was now a stage set for a fraudulent transfer, and the actors were all smiling, passing the gravy. Evelyn, restored to her position at the head of the table by Archer's polite, if icy, maneuvering, was attempting to hold court. She was desperate to regain control of the narrative, to re-establish that I was the outlier, the uninvited guest, the problem. Archer, seated to my father's right, was a silent, looming thunderhead. He ate his turkey with a slow, deliberate precision, his metal briefcase resting on the floor by his feet, a visible, tangible question mark in the room. My father was a wreck. He kept looking at Archer, then at Logan, then at me, his hand visibly trembling as he lifted his fork. Logan and Sierra, sensing the operation was in jeopardy, kept the conversation unnaturally light, talking loudly about their recent ski trip, about Logan's successes at the firm, about anything other than the two elephants in the room. Mary and David Thompson, my witnesses, served the food with a quiet dignity, their eyes missing nothing. Evelyn, emboldened by 2 glasses of Chardonnay and the supportive presence of Logan's parents, finally made her move. She lifted her glass. the crystal catching the light from the chandelier that was, at this very moment, recording her every word. "I would like to make a toast," she announced, her voice overly bright. "To family, to those who truly understand what it means," and she turned her head, her eyes landing on me with a look of pure, saccharine poison. "To the importance of knowing one's place, it's really just common courtesy. A simple RSVP. It lets people know if you're coming, or if you're just planning to show up." Logan's mother let out a small, appreciative titter. Sierra smirked into her napkin. Logan stared at me, daring me to react. They were painting me as the rude, entitled interloper. I set my fork down on my plate. The small metallic sound was sharp in the sudden quiet. I looked past Evelyn, to the painting of the Colorado mountains that my mother had hung on the far wall. "It is difficult to RSVP," I said, my voice calm, "when you were explicitly not invited." The air in the room evaporated. Logan's mother's smile froze. My father closed his eyes, as if in pain. Evelyn's face, which had been flushed with triumph, turned a dull, blotchy red. "That's," she stammered. "Greg," Archer's voice sliced through her attempt. He had not moved, but his attention was now fully on my father. "Logan mentioned you had some papers to sign tonight. A new trust, I believe." My father looked like he had been struck. "Dad, it's..." Logan immediately jumped in, adopting the smooth, condescending tone of a lawyer handling a confused client. "Archer, it's just a simple procedural update. We're restructuring some assets to optimize the family's tax burden. It's all standard estate planning. You, of all people, should understand the necessity of protecting one's legacy." "Optimizing," Archer repeated. The word dripped with contempt. "I find that people who use that word are usually hiding something. What exactly is being optimized, Logan?" "It's just procedure," Logan snapped, his composure cracking. Evelyn saw her carefully constructed evening collapsing. She saw her prize, my father's signature, slipping away. She needed a diversion. She needed to make me the enemy, the source of this conflict. The main course was finished. Mary and David, with perfect timing, were clearing the plates. Evelyn stood abruptly and went to the sideboard, returning with the $95 pie. "Dessert," she announced, her voice strained. "My homemade pumpkin pie." She cut a slice and handed it to Logan's father. She cut a second slice. I, knowing what was coming, knowing I had to push the final button, reached for the small dessert plate to pass to my father, who was seated beside me. My hand was steady. I picked up the plate. "Stop it," Evelyn hissed, her voice low and venomous. I paused, the plate hovering in my hand. "Stop what, Evelyn? Passing the pie?" "Stop acting!" she shrieked. The facade of the gracious hostess shattered, revealing the raw, desperate greed beneath. "Stop pretending you belong here. You were not invited." Her hand, the one not holding the pie server, shot out. It wasn't a push. It was a violent slap, aimed not at me, but at the plate. She swatted my hand, hard. The porcelain plate flew from my grasp, crashing onto the hardwood floor and shattering. Pumpkin pie and whipped cream sprayed across the floorboards and the hem of my pants. The room went dead silent. I stared at the broken china. "You ruined it," she screamed, her face contorted. "You ruin everything. You come in here, uninvited, and you ruin my perfect dinner." Before I could stand, before I could even process the spray of the pie, she moved again. This was not about the plate. This was about me. Her hand swung back and then forward. The sound was shockingly loud, a flat, sharp crack that echoed in the dining room. My head snapped to the side, a bright, blinding explosion of pain erupting on my left cheek. She had slapped me, across the face, in front of my father, in front of my grandfather, in front of her allies and my witnesses. A universal, horrified gasp filled the room. My cheek was on fire, a hot, stinging pulse that radiated into my jaw. I slowly turned my head back to face her. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I just looked at her. At the end of the table, Archer's heavy metal briefcase, which had been leaning against his chair, fell over with a loud, metallic clatter on the floor. He didn't even look down. His eyes, cold and assessing, were locked on Evelyn's heaving chest. "Oh, my lord," Mary Thompson whispered from the kitchen doorway, her hand covering her mouth. She and David stood frozen, having seen the entire assault. Above us, the microphone in the chandelier had captured it all. Evelyn's scream, the smash of the plate, and the sickening, wet sound of her hand hitting my face. "Evelyn!" my father roared. He shot to his feet, his chair flying backward and hitting the wall. He was staring at the bright red handprint already forming on my skin. The weak, passive man I had known for 15 years was gone, replaced by a stranger incandescent with rage. "Greg, sit down," Logan commanded, instantly on his feet. He grabbed my father's arm, trying to physically restrain him. "This is exactly what she wants. She's provoking you. Don't let her win. Sit down and protect your family." He shoved the bound stack of trust documents across the table, knocking over a water glass. "Sign the papers. Greg, sign it now, before you lose your temper. Sign it and let's be done with this." He was using the assault. He was using the chaos as a smokescreen, a final, desperate attempt to get the signature while my father was disoriented. My father was shaking, torn between the documents and the daughter he had just watched being struck. "I don't believe," Archer's voice cut through the panic like a diamond drill, "that he will be signing anything." Archer stood up slowly. He was a tall man, and he seemed to fill the room. He ignored Logan, he ignored my father, he ignored Evelyn, who was now breathing in short, panicked gasps, realizing what she had done. He raised his silver-headed cane, not as a weapon, but as a pointer. He aimed it directly at the 72-inch television hanging on the opposite wall, which was currently displaying a serene, looping video of a crackling fireplace. "Before we have any more talk of signatures," Archer said, his voice resonating with cold authority, "let's all take a look at what, exactly, is being hidden from Greg." Evelyn, still vibrating with adrenaline, looked at him in confusion. "What are you talking about? The fireplace? Are you insane?" I did not touch my cheek, though it felt like it was splitting open. I slowly reached into my pocket and took out my phone. My thumb moved to the icon I had set on my home screen. I pressed it. On the wall, the crackling fireplace vanished. The screen flickered, went black for one agonizing second, and then lit up bright white, dominated by a single image. Slide 1. The La Belle Cuisine invoice, my name, my credit card, Evelyn's shipping address, $4,800. "What? What is that?" Sierra whispered, her voice trembling. Evelyn's eyes widened in pure, undiluted horror. She recognized the invoice. She saw her name. She saw the copper pots, the mixer, the knives. "No!" she shrieked. "Turn it off! Greg, make her turn it off! It's a fake! She's—" She lunged for the sideboard, where the sleek black remote control for the Apple TV rested. She snatched it, spun, aimed it at the screen, and started mashing the power button. Click, click, click. Nothing happened. The invoice remained, a digital monument to her theft. "It's broken!" she screamed at Logan. "It's not working!" Archer bent down, with the stiff grace of an old man, and retrieved his fallen metal briefcase. He set it on the table. "It's remarkably difficult to operate a remote control," he said, his voice almost conversational, "without its batteries." He opened his left hand. Resting in his palm were 2 AAA batteries. "I took the liberty of removing them when I arrived," he said, closing his hand. "I find a fake fireplace terribly distracting during a meal." The room was in a state of suspended animation. Logan's parents were staring at the screen, their faces pale. Logan looked like he was going to be sick. He wasn't just seeing a stolen cookware set. He was an attorney. He was seeing a chain of evidence. He was seeing a lawsuit. "Birch Vista LLC?" David Thompson, my neighbor, read aloud from the next slide as I tapped my phone again. Greg, what is that? That's not your company. Mary, standing beside him, pointed at the flowchart that now filled the screen. That money, it's coming from Kayla's account, and it's going into that company. Evelyn, that's your name. This is deceit. Evelyn was backed against the wall, clutching the dead remote, her chest heaving. I stood up straight, my entire body humming with a cold, clear energy. The pain in my cheek was just a dull throb now, a distant signal. I looked at the woman who had slapped me. You wanted dessert, Evelyn, I said, my voice ringing out, clear and steady. I tapped my phone one more time, bringing up the $25,000 kickback from Logan's law firm. This, I announced to the silent, horrified room, is the truth. The screen was a beacon in the stunned, silent room. All eyes were locked on it. This, I said, my voice cutting through the silence, is an invoice from La Belle Cuisine for $4,820. You can see the shipping address. Evelyn, is this house? You can see the customer name is you, and you can see, right here. I pointed with my phone as if it were a laser. The last 4 digits of the credit card used for payment, my credit card, the one I gave my father for medical emergencies. Logan's mother made a small, strangled sound. Evelyn, still clutching the useless remote, was as white as the wall she was pressed against. That's just the appetizer, I said. I tapped the screen. A new slide appeared. It was Maura Hale's masterpiece, the Birch Vista LLC flowchart. This is what happened to the $60,000 I've spent on this house in the last 18 months. The money for the new roof, the new boiler, the money for my father's hospital bills. The chart was simple. Arrows showed my payments going to the vendors. Then, identical arrows showed funds being expensed from my father's woodshop and funneled directly into a single square box labeled Birch Vista LLC. And this, I said, tapping the screen again to zoom in on the incorporation document, is the sole owner of Birch Vista, Evelyn Whitmore. Greg, David Thompson said, his voice shaking with anger. She's been stealing from you. She's been stealing from Kayla. My father didn't seem to hear him. He was staring at the screen, his face a mask of disbelief. He was a woodworker. He understood tangible things. He was looking at a blueprint of his own betrayal. She wasn't just stealing, I said. She had a partner. Tap. The next slide. It was the email, the one from Logan's secure work account, sent to Sierra's personal address. I had highlighted the key passage in bright, unmissable red. It's all set. The restructuring consolidates the house and the shop under the new trust. Your mother is the primary administrator. We just need your dad to sign the final transfer agreement before the old man shows up. Once it's signed, Kayla is locked out for good. She can't touch it. Sierra let out a high, thin wail, like a trapped animal. Logan, you said it was just taxes. You said it was normal. Shut up, Sierra, Logan snarled, his eyes darting between the screen, me, and Archer. He was no longer a smooth, condescending lawyer. He was a cornered rat. This is privileged communication. This is inadmissible. We're not in court, Logan, I said. Not yet. You were so worried about locking me out. You should have checked who else was on the email chain. And finally me, I said. The document you've been so desperate to get signed tonight. Tap. The final slide. It was the signature page from the Whitmore Living Trust, the one Logan had shoved at my father just moments before. I had photographed it when I planted the AirTag. It clearly listed the beneficiaries: Evelyn Whitmore, primary, Sierra Whitmore Harris, secondary. My name, Kayla Whitmore, was nowhere. I was, as Logan had promised in writing, locked out for good. You've seen the plan, I said to the room. Now, I'd like you all to hear the motive, in their own words. My thumb moved from the Keynote app to the audio file. I pressed play. The room was suddenly filled with the clear, high-fidelity sound from the chandelier. It was Evelyn and Logan, whispering conspiratorially, their voices echoing in the very room where they now stood. Evelyn's voice. He's putting it off. He's weak. What if he backs out? Logan's voice. He won't. He's cornered. After dinner, I'll bring out the signature pages with the dessert. He'll sign it right at the tables. And then, the final clip. The one that sealed the malice. Evelyn's voice. Good, because as soon as he signs, we change the locks. I want her key to be useless by midnight. I want this done. There was a faint sound on the recording, a sound of complicity that I had almost missed, a small, suppressed giggle. It was Sierra. My father turned his head, very slowly, and looked at his wife. He didn't look angry. He looked dead. The audio clicked off, plunging the room back into a horrifying, absolute silence, broken only by Sierra's choking sobs. Logan was the first to find his voice. He was a lawyer, and his first instinct was to attack the procedure. "That's it," he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You're done. That is a felony. You illegally recorded this conversation. That is inadmissible. It is criminal, and I am calling the police right now." He fumbled for his phone. "I'm having you arrested for illegal wiretapping." "I don't think you will," a new voice said from the doorway. Every head snapped toward the dining room entrance. A man I had never seen, built like a linebacker and wearing a cheap suit, was standing there, holding a sheaf of papers. Beside him stood Atticus Vale. Atticus was the complete opposite. He was immaculate in his dark, tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly in place. He looked like he had just stepped out of a boardroom, not into a domestic war zone. He surveyed the room, the shattered pie plate, Evelyn against the wall, my father's pale face, my own reddened cheek, and he gave a small, satisfied nod. "Mr. Harris?" Atticus said, his voice as smooth as polished marble. "I am Atticus Vale, counsel for Ms. Kayla Whitmore. You seem to be under the mistaken impression that Colorado is a two-party consent state. It is not." Logan froze, his phone halfway to his ear. "It is," Atticus continued, taking a deliberate step into the room. "A one-party consent state, as Ms. Whitmore was a party to several of these conversations, and as the other recordings were made in a space where there was no reasonable expectation of privacy, a family dinner, for example, they are perfectly, wonderfully admissible. You, of all people, should know the state law. Counselor." Atticus smiled, a thin, cold expression. "But that's not why I'm here. This," he said, taking the papers from the large man, "is for you." The large man, clearly a process server, stepped forward and thrust the documents at Logan. "Logan Harris, you have been served." What is this?" Logan stammered, his hands shaking as he took the papers. "That," Atticus said, "is an emergency, ex parte preservation order, signed by Judge Miranda Hayes less than 6 hours ago. It freezes all documents, digital and physical, related to the Whitmore Trust and Birch Vista LLC, pending a full civil hearing. It specifically names you, Evelyn Whitmore, and your firm, Hollister and Bright. My associate filed the identical motion in Delaware this afternoon, freezing Birch Vista completely. That consulting fee of $25,000? It's now trapped, pending discovery." Atticus pointed to the box of files still sitting on the desk. "You are now legally barred from moving, altering, or destroying a single piece of paper in that box. Congratulations on bringing home your work, Mr. Harris." Logan stared at the order, his face the color of ash. He was finished. His career was finished. As Logan was imploding, Archer Whitmore, who had been watching this all unfold with a quiet, analytical interest, stepped forward. He placed his metal briefcase on the cleared end of the dining table and clicked the 2 latches. Clack, clack. The sound was as final as a judge's gavel. "It appears," Archer said, his voice drawing all attention, "that the legalities are being handled. Now, we come to the foundation." He opened the case. Inside, it was lined with dark blue velvet. It contained 2 items. The first was a thick, blue-backed document, Clearly a will, notarized with the seal of the state of New Mexico. The second was a single, cream-colored envelope, sealed with a thick wax W. "Evelyn," Archer said, looking at her, "for 15 years, you have operated under the assumption that I am a fickle, sentimental old fool. You were half right. I am old." He picked up the sealed envelope. "When I knew I would be coming here, I prepared this. It's a letter, a test, if you will." He broke the seal. He unfolded the single page. He read, "To my family, I have come to see the state of my son's house. I have left the bulk of my estate in a trust that will be revealed upon my death, but I have set aside one final test. I have learned in my long life that a person's character is not revealed when they are being watched, but when they believe they are safe. It is revealed in how they treat those they perceive to have less power. Whoever, in my presence, insults, demeans, or offers violence to my granddaughter, Kayla Whitmore, will, by that very act, reveal themselves as the rot in this foundation. They will prove themselves unworthy of any part of the Whitmore legacy." He placed the letter on the table. He looked directly at Evelyn. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. The assault, the slap. She had failed the test in the most spectacular, public way possible. "You," Archer said, his voice flat, "have failed." At that moment, my father, Greg, moved. He had been frozen, staring at the slides, at the trust, at the will. Now, he walked slowly around the table until he was standing directly in front of me. He didn't speak. He just gently, his rough woodworker's fingers trembling, reached out and touched my cheek, just below the stinging, red imprint of Evelyn's hand. His eyes traced the mark. He looked at the shattered plate on the floor. He looked at the audio app, still open on my phone. His shock, his weakness, his fear, it all collapsed. And what rose in its place was a slow, burning rage I had not seen since my mother was alive, a rage he had buried for 15 years. "She hit you," he whispered. "It was not a question. It was a verdict." "Yes," I said. Mary Thompson, my witness, stepped forward. "We saw it. Greg, Atticus, sir, we both saw it. It was unprovoked. Evelyn just hauled off and slapped her, right across the face." "She was provoking me," Evelyn finally shrieked, finding her voice. "She ruined everything with her slides, her lies." Sierra, seeing her entire inheritance, her entire future, evaporate, crumpled. She dissolved into a heap on the floor, sobbing hysterically. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. We were under so much pressure." Logan said, "He said we deserved it. The money." Archer Whitmore looked down at his sobbing, 25-year-old granddaughter. His face was devoid of all pity. "Was it pressure, Sierra?" he asked, his voice cold as the grave. "Or was it simply greed?" Atticus Vale let the silence hang, allowing the implications of the preservation order to settle on Logan. Then, he turned his focus to the true center of the conflict, my father. "Mr. Whitmore, Greg," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "My colleague has served the order freezing the trust assets, which, as counsel for the trust, Mr. Harris was legally obligated to accept. I must now inform you that, based on the prima facie evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and battery presented tonight, I am also filing an immediate injunction to halt all transfers of your personal and business assets, pending a full judicial review." "You can't," Logan yelled. The papers crumpled in his fist. "I am his counsel. He hasn't authorized you. This is coercion." "Mr. Harris, your status as counsel is, shall we say, deeply compromised," Atticus said, his voice chillingly calm. "In fact, I would be far more concerned about the formal complaint I will be filing with the Colorado Bar Association at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I suspect they will be very interested in Birch Vista LLC and the $25,000 consulting fee." Logan looked to Archer, a last, desperate appeal, grasping at the one remaining power player. "Archer, please. This is a family misunderstanding. We can still—" The loan. "We can still discuss the terms." Archer, who was carefully placing his New Mexico will back into the metal case, did not even bother to look up. "The soft loan?" he said, the words cutting through the air. "The $300,000 line of credit I had provisionally extended to your firm, contingent on a review of ethical conduct? That offer, Logan, is withdrawn, permanently. You tied your horse to the wrong wagon." Logan stumbled back, hitting the sideboard. The kickback from Evelyn was one thing. Losing Archer's potential backing was catastrophic. Personal ruin. My father, Greg, was watching this exchange, his eyes moving from the presentation screen to Logan, to Evelyn, who was still pressed against the wall. The fog of 15 years of gaslighting, of weakness, of willful ignorance, was clearing. He saw the structure. He saw the rot. He straightened his back. The first time I had seen him stand tall in my adult life. "Atticus," my father said, his voice raspy but clear. "Mr. Vale?" "Greg," Atticus replied, giving him his full, undivided attention. I have signed things. This last year. Logan, Evelyn, they brought me papers. They said it was for taxes. For the shop." He looked at his own hands, calloused from a lifetime of woodworking, as if they had betrayed him. I authorize you. I want you to review every signature I have made for the last 2 years. Everything." Atticus nodded, a grim, satisfied expression. "We will. In fact," he glanced at his phone, "my associate has already pulled the recent county filings, the durable power of attorney you signed 3 months ago. Greg, giving Evelyn full and immediate authority over your medical and financial decisions. It was filed incorrectly. They rushed. The notary stamp is invalid." Evelyn let out a small, strangled gasp. They had been sloppy. "The rest of the data is clean," I said, speaking for the first time since the audio played. The room fell silent again. "I am forwarding the full forensic audit from Maura Hale to Atticus right now. The $60,477 from my accounts. It matches. Dollar for dollar. The deposits into Birch Vista LLC. The numbers do not lie." "And neither," Mary Thompson said, her voice trembling with a quiet, neighborly rage. "Does this—" She stepped forward from the kitchen doorway, holding her iPhone. Evelyn, who had been trying to shrink into the wallpaper, now looked up, her eyes wide with a fresh, animal panic. "What are you doing now?" Evelyn whispered. "I saw you tonight, Evelyn," Mary said, her voice full of the moral authority of a 20-year friend. "I saw the look in your eyes when Archer and Kayla arrived. I was worried for Kayla. So, when I came back from the kitchen with the pie, I started recording." She held up the phone. On the screen, a video was playing. It was the dinner table, filmed from her perspective. It showed me reaching for the pie plate. It showed Evelyn screaming, "Stop acting!" It showed, in clear, undeniable, high-definition video, her hand striking the plate from my grasp, and then the vicious, open-handed slap across my face. She provoked me!" Evelyn shrieked, finding her last, desperate defense. "You see, she was baiting me. She came in here to ruin my perfect dinner. She pushed me." "That is not what I see," Mary said, her eyes cold. She did not raise her voice. "I see Kayla sitting perfectly still. I see her calmly passing a plate to her father. And then I see you, Evelyn, assaulting her. I believe the police will call that unprovoked battery." The video was brutal. It showed my head snapping back, my hair flying from the force of the blow. It was undeniable. Sierra, who had been a sobbing heap on the floor, suddenly lurched to her feet, her mascara-streaked face a mask of terror. "It was him!" she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at her husband, Logan. "It was all him. He told me it was legal. He told me it was just tax planning. He said Kayla owed us for living here. He told me to get Dad to sign, that it was the only way to protect our future. You stupid, Logan started, lunging toward his wife. Atticus's large process server, who had been standing silently by the door, took one step, blocking Logan's path with a chest like a brick wall. Shut up, Sierra, Logan bellowed, adjusting his ruined tie. You were in on it from the beginning. This was her idea. He wheeled, his arm outstretched, pointing directly at Evelyn. She planned all of it. She started Birch Vista 2 years ago. She came to me for help structuring it. I was just providing legal services. She was the brains. She's the one who wanted Kayla gone. She's the one who was obsessed with the money. The room was a vortex of accusation and panic. Logan's parents, mortified, were grabbing their coats from the foyer, heading for the door without a single word of farewell. The entire rotten structure was collapsing in on itself, beam by beam. Archer Whitmore watched the scene, his face impassive. He had seen the evidence. He had heard the testimony, and now he watched the consequences. He looked at my father, who was standing, shaking, in the middle of the wreckage of his marriage, his family, his life. Greg, Archer said, his voice quiet but carrying over Sierra's sobs. It all comes down to this. You are a weak man. You have made a weak man's choices for 15 years. You let this woman poison your house. You let her steal from your daughter. You let her dishonor your first wife's memory. He gestured to me, standing by the table, my cheek throbbing, my presentation still glowing on the television screen. And you stood by and let her assault your only child. He planted his cane on the hardwood floor, tap. This is the last choice you get to make. Who do you protect? My father looked at Evelyn, her face a mask of rage and terror. He looked at Sierra, who was weeping for her lost inheritance, not for her family. He looked at Logan, who was staring at Atticus with pure, undiluted hatred. Then he looked at me. He walked over to me, past the shattered pie plate, past the stain on the floor. He stood in front of me, the way he had when I was a child and he was a giant. He looked at the red handprint on my face. My daughter, he said, his voice cracking, but absolute. I choose my daughter. He turned to Atticus. Protect my daughter. I felt a wave of, not triumph, but resolution. The pain in my cheek was real. The $60,000 were real. But this was the foundation. I don't want the money right now. Atticus, I said, my voice clear. Everyone, even Sierra, stopped to listen. That's not the first priority. I want him safe. I want her. I nodded at Evelyn. Away from him. I want full transparency. I want the locks changed tonight, and I want her signature removed from every account my father has, business and personal. That, Atticus said, is precisely the plan. Greg, by your authorization, we are enacting the terms of the preservation order, and that order, which Mr. Harris has in his hand, means Evelyn cannot move 1 cent from any account, including Birch Vista. She is, as of this moment, financially frozen. Evelyn looked at my father, at me, at Archer. Her allies were gone. Her money was frozen. Her future was gone. She did the only thing a cornered animal could. She fumbled in her pocket for her own phone. She was shaking so badly she could barely dial. She turned her back to the room, seeking a small, false sense of privacy. She put the phone to her ear. She was still in the dining room. She was still 10 feet from the chandelier. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the live listen button on the microphone app. I hit the speakerphone icon. Evelyn's voice, panicked and whispering, suddenly filled the room from my phone's speaker. Mom, it's all gone wrong, she sobbed into her phone. My father froze. We were all listening to her side of a desperate call to her own mother. He didn't sign it. The old man, Archer, he showed up. And Kayla, that bitch, she recorded everything. She knows about the money. She knows about Birch Vista. There was a pause. She was listening to her mother. I don't know what to do, Evelyn wailed. If he had just signed it, If Greg had just signed it tonight like he was supposed to, the house would be ours. It would all belong to me. I would have had control of everything. But he didn't sign. I let the audio play for another 10 seconds. It was a raw, unfiltered confession of intent. I clicked stop. Evelyn heard her own voice echo in the room and she spun around, her eyes landing on my phone. She saw the open microphone app. She realized what had just happened. It was not a scream, it was a howl, a sound of pure animalistic defeat. My father looked at her. The last, remaining shred of doubt in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. He had made his choice. This was the end. The broadcast of Evelyn's confession hung in the air, a raw, digital echo of her greed. She was staring at my phone, her mouth open in that silent howl, the sound of a life imploding. Logan, galvanized by pure, adrenalized panic, saw his opening. While all eyes were on his wife, he snatched the Whitmore Trust file box from the desk. He turned, not for the front door, but for the kitchen exit, intending to flee into the backyard. He didn't make 2 steps. Atticus's process server, the large, silent man who had been blocking the doorway, simply moved his body 3 feet to the left. He didn't raise his hands. He just occupied the space. He was a human wall. "You can't do this," Logan yelled, clutching the box to his chest. "This is my property. It's attorney work product." "It is, as of 6:17 this evening, evidence under a court-ordered preservation seal," Atticus said, not even turning to look at him. "You are free to leave. Mr. Harris, the box is not. If you attempt to exit this house with those documents, you will be in immediate criminal contempt of a court order, and I will have the sheriff here in 3 minutes." Logan looked at the man blocking his path. He looked at Atticus. He looked at Archer. He was checkmated. With a snarl of pure, impotent rage, he slammed the box back onto the dining table, the contents rattling. He was trapped. Sierra, seeing her husband's defeat, crawled on her hands and knees across the expensive rug. She didn't go to her mother or her husband. She went to Archer. She grabbed the leg of his trousers, her face a grotesque mess of running mascara and tears. Grandfather, please," she wept. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Logan, he told me it was normal. He said it was to protect Dad. Please, don't let this happen. I'll fix it. I promise. Forgive me. Please, forgive me." She was begging the man she had never known, the man she had been actively plotting against, for an absolution that would restore her inheritance. Archer looked down at her, his face carved from ice. He did not move. He did not offer a hand. He did not soften. "Forgiveness," he said, his voice quiet, "is a word. I do not trust words. I have spent my life building things that generate power. I trust tangible, verifiable actions. You have given me none. You giggled while they planned to change the locks on your sister. Get off my suit." He nudged his leg, and Sierra recoiled as if she had been burned, collapsing back into a sobbing heap. The rejection was absolute. My father, Greg, watched this. He watched his youngest daughter beg for money, his wife catatonic with exposure, his son-in-law a caged, snarling animal. He turned, and in front of everyone, in front of Archer, of Atticus, of Mary and David Thompson, he faced me. He did not try to make excuses. He did not blame Evelyn. He did not blame Logan. He looked at the red handprint on my cheek. "Kayla," he said, and his voice broke. He stopped, swallowed, and started again. For 15 years, for 15 years, I have let this happen. I was a coward. I was so afraid of being alone again, so afraid of this. He gestured to the wreckage of the room. That I let her build a wall between us. I let her disrespect your mother. I let her disrespect you. He looked down at his own feet. "I failed you. When you were a child. I failed you. I am sorry. I am so sorry. You did not deserve any of this." It was a public confession. It was the truth. Finally, after a lifetime of evasions, the remaining guests, Evelyn's allies who had been sitting at the table, were now silent, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and dawning comprehension. They were not just witnesses to a family fight, they were witnesses to a confession. I looked at my father, at the broken man who had finally told the truth. The rage in me, the cold, hard engine that had been driving me for weeks, suddenly quieted. It wasn't forgiveness, it was a foundation. It was the first solid piece of ground I had touched in years. "I know," I said, "and I don't want your apology right now. I want one thing." He looked up, his eyes desperate. Anything, Kayla." 9 o'clock tomorrow morning," I said, my voice steady. "You will come with me and Mr. Vale to the courthouse. You will sign, in front of a judge, a full and irrevocable revocation of every power of attorney, medical and financial, that you have ever granted to Evelyn or to Logan. You will sign new documents, prepared by Mr. Vale, that will be put in a secure trust. You will do this. That is the only thing I want from you." "I'll be there," he said, without a moment's hesitation. "I'll sign it." "No!" Evelyn shrieked, snapping out of her catatonia. The final nail was being driven, and she had found one last, rusted tool. "Greg, don't you see what she's doing? She's just like him." She pointed a shaking finger at Archer. "Cold. Calculating. She doesn't love you. She's just like her mother. Your first wife. Always judging you. Always making you feel small. And now her daughter is here to finish the job. She's taking your house. Greg, she's taking your mind. Just like he is. They're turning you against me. After everything I've done for you." She was trying to dredge up the old insecurities, the old wounds, the lies she had used to isolate him for a decade and a half. My father turned and looked at her. He looked at the woman who had, less than an hour ago, confessed on a live microphone that she was trying to steal his house. He said nothing. He just turned his back on her. The silence was her answer. She was invisible. She had been erased. Archer, who had been watching this all with a quiet, analytical patience, nodded once. He turned back to the dining table and his open metal briefcase. "The old business," he said, "is concluded. Now, we begin the new business." From the case, he withdrew a second, thick, leather-bound document. It was not a will, it was a contract. He placed it on the table in front of me, in the space cleared by the shattered pie plate. "This," he said, "was my Thanksgiving gift to you, Kayla. Regardless of what happened here tonight, I had this drawn up last week." I looked at the cover. It was embossed with the name of his holding company, Santa Fe Mesa Energy, and my company, Northline Design and Build. "I read the quarterly reports on your firm," he said. "Your margins are excellent. Your debt-to-asset ratio is solid. You build good, strong structures. You are, as I always suspected you would be, a master builder." He tapped the cover. "This is an investment contract, a partnership, $3 million, seed capital for a new, large-scale project." My heart stopped. $3 million. That was transformative. That was game-changing. I looked at him, suspicious. "What's the catch?" Archer smiled. It was the first real smile I had seen from him, and it was just like I remembered, sharp, intelligent, and without artifice. "There is always a catch. Kayla, I am not a sentimentalist. I am an investor. You're right to ask. I have one condition, a moral clause." He opened the contract to the last page, to the addendum. "You will not use this money for revenge," he said, his voice firm. "You will not use it to fund Mr. Vale's lawsuits. You will not use it to bleed these people." He gestured to Evelyn and Logan. "Dry. That is a poor return on investment." He pointed to the clause. "You will use this $3 million to build something. Specifically, you will use it to fund the Cedar Hollow affordable housing project you proposed to the town council last year, the one they rejected for lack of capital." I stared at him. He knew about that? That was my passion project. 120 units of high-quality, sustainable, affordable housing for the workers, the laborers, the teachers of this town, the people like my crew, the people Evelyn and Logan scorned. The condition, Archer said, is that you use my investment to build something for people who have nothing. You will build. Kayla, you will not destroy. That is the only way you win. Do we have a deal? I looked at the contract. I looked at the man who had seen me. Truly seen me. For the first time in 14 years. He wasn't saving me. He was investing in me. I nodded. I'll do it. It's a deal. I'm a builder. I'm not a wrecker. Good, he said. At that moment, Logan, who had been stewing in his own toxic silence, pulled out his phone. He was staring at Atticus, his face a mask of pure hatred. He started typing furiously. Logan, Sierra whispered, what are you doing? Don't make it worse. It can't be worse, he hissed, his thumb jabbing at the screen. He's filing with the bar. I'm calling my partner. We're going to counter-sue for harassment, for emotional distress. He was desperate, and he was stupid. As he was typing, the 72-inch television screen, which was still glowing with the image of the Whitmore Trust signature page, flickered. It was still mirrored to the Apple TV. Logan, in his panic, had forgotten that his phone was also connected to the house Wi-Fi. A notification popped up, mirroring his phone screen for the entire room to see. It was a text message, from him, to Mark Hollister, his senior partner. The message read, Plan tonight is dead. Archer is here. They have everything. The Birch Vista account is frozen. Get the shredders online now. I'm heading to the office. We have to purge the server. An admission of guilt, a conspiracy to destroy evidence, projected, 12 inches high, for his lawyer, his father-in-law, his grandfather-in-law, and 2 civilian witnesses to read. David Thompson, my neighbor, read the text message aloud, his voice booming with the righteous indignation of a decent man. Get the shredders online now. Purge the server. My God. Logan looked at the screen. He saw his own text. He saw his career, his life, his entire future, go up in digital smoke. He made a sound, a low, guttural noise of pure defeat, and sank into the chair, his head in his hands. The last of Evelyn's allies, the family friends who had come for a pleasant Thanksgiving dinner, stood up as one. They didn't look at Evelyn. They didn't look at Logan. They looked at me. The woman they had seen mocked, the woman they had seen slapped, the woman who was now, clearly, the only one in the room with any power. I stood there, my cheeks stinging, my hands steady. Archer, beside me, leaned in. His voice was a low whisper, meant only for me. It's time to finish this. I looked at the grandfather clock in the hallway. The pendulum swung. The long brass hand clicked into place. It was 8 o'clock, the time my father was supposed to sign. I picked up my phone. It was the only remote control that mattered. I walked from the head of the table, past my father, past the wreckage of the pie, until I was standing directly beside the television. I was ready to play the last file. I stood by the television, my phone in my hand, the entire room frozen by the digital confession of Logan's text. He was planning to purge the server. He was admitting to the conspiracy. Evelyn was a ghost, Sierra a wreck, and my father was, for the first time in my life, seeing the full, unadulterated truth. It's worse than that, I said. My voice was low, and it cut through the silence. Stealing my money, stealing the house, that was just the plan. This was the contingency. I pressed play on the last audio file, the one I had saved from 2 nights ago, the one that detailed what they would do after my father signed. The sound from my phone was clinically clear, amplified by the stunned silence. Logan's voice. Fine. He signs. We change the locks. What if Greg fights back? What if he realizes what he signed and tries to undo it? He's sentimental. Evelyn's voice, colder than I had ever heard it. He won't. He's too weak. But if he does, we act concerned. Concerned? Logan asked. We say he's getting forgetful, Evelyn's voice explained, methodical and calm. We say he's confused. He's mixing up his finances. He's showing signs of, we have that invalid power of attorney. We can use it. We tell his doctor he's a danger to himself. We get him moved. We put him in a home, a nice one. Of course. For his own protection. The audio clicked off. My father made a sound, a short, strangled gasp, and physically recoiled. He stumbled back, his hand clutching his chest, staring at his wife of 15 years. You would have, he whispered, his face sheet white. You would have buried me. They were not just going to steal his house. They were going to steal his sanity, his freedom, his life. Greg, Atticus Vale, stepped forward, his voice a sharp, commanding anchor in the storm. There is no more time for deliberation. This woman is a clear and present danger to your financial security and your physical liberty. Atticus pulled a single, fresh document from his briefcase. He placed it on the dining table, on top of the ruined, food-stained tablecloth. This, he announced to the room, is an emergency petition for a temporary restraining order, a domestic violence TRO, based on the documented financial abuse, the conspiracy to defraud, and the physical assault witnessed tonight by Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. A judge will sign this without hesitation. He looked at my father. It orders Evelyn Whitmore to vacate this premises immediately and to have no contact with you, pending a hearing. All it requires is your signature. He offered my father his own heavy silver pen. My father looked at Evelyn. His hand, which had been trembling with fear, was now shaking with a cold. Profound rage. He took the pen. He leaned over the table and signed his name, Greg Whitmore, the signature cutting into the paper. It is signed, Atticus said, retrieving the document. In the presence of multiple witnesses, he turned his gaze to Evelyn. You have 5 minutes to collect your personal necessities. You will then leave this house. No, Evelyn shrieked, finding her voice. You can't. This is my home. Greg, you can't do this to me. You have no home here, Archer stated. His voice was not loud, but it was absolute. He walked back to his metal briefcase and opened it, taking out the thick, notarized will from New Mexico. I told you I set a test, he said, holding the will. I told you that letter was a warning. You failed. He held up the document. This is my trust, the Santa Fe Mesa Trust. It outlines the distribution of my entire estate. My son, Greg, is a beneficiary. My granddaughter, Sierra, was a beneficiary, entitled to a 5% share. Sierra's head snapped up, a wild, desperate hope in her tear-filled eyes. And you, Evelyn, Archer continued, his eyes locking on her, were named as a conditional beneficiary, entitled to Greg's share only upon his death, to ensure his comfort. Evelyn stared, her mind clearly racing, seeing a lifeline. But, Archer said, my trust is specific. I am an engineer. I build in redundancies. There is a clause, Article 4, Section B, the character clause. It states, he quoted from memory, as if reading an engineering spec, that any beneficiary who commits an act of provable violence, financial malfeasance, or profound defamation against another named beneficiary, specifically my granddaughter, Kayla Whitmore, shall have their entire portion, present and future, voided, immediately, and that voided portion shall be redirected, in its entirety, to Kayla. He let the words hang in the air. You slapped her, Archer said, his voice flat. In front of 6 witnesses, on video, you have voided your claim. You get nothing. You are disinherited, by your own hand. Sierra let out a sound of pure, animal agony. Her 5%, gone. She scrambled to her feet, her terror overriding her paralysis. She didn't run to her mother. She ran to Logan. You, she screamed, pounding on his chest. "You did this. You told me she was nobody. You told me he was just an old man. You told me to ignore her. I'll tell them everything." She spun around, facing Atticus, her hands clasped as if in prayer. "I'll cooperate. I swear. I know the code to the safe in their bedroom, where Evelyn keeps the real ledgers, the ones for Birch Vista. I know the password to Logan's private email. I'll give it all to you. Just please don't let me go to jail." "My associate will take your statement," Atticus said, nodding once. Logan, who had been sitting in a catatonic state, was jolted by his phone buzzing on the table. It lit up. An email had arrived. And the Apple TV mirror, still active, flashed the notification for the entire room to see. From Mark Hollister. Subject: Urgent. Preservation order. Body: Logan, I just received a preservation order from a Judge Hayes. Our servers are locked. Do not delete anything. You are suspended, effective immediately. Pending a full internal investigation. Do not come to the office. Do not contact any clients. We are retaining outside counsel. His text message, his panicked plea to purge the server, had been received. He was suspended. His career was over. The room was silent, save for Evelyn's ragged, hitching breaths. The battle was over. The demolition was complete. My father walked to me, moving through the debris of his second marriage. He looked at the table, at the half-eaten food, the shattered pie plate, the damning legal documents. He reached out and took my hand. His was rough, covered in sawdust and the faint, familiar smell of wood stain. "In my house," he said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't place. "She raised her hand to you. In my mother's house." He gripped my hand, his knuckles white. "Kayla, as God is my witness, from this day forward, no one will ever raise a hand to you in my presence again. This is your home. It was always your home." I looked at the people who had scorned me, at the family that had cast me out. "I don't want every dollar, Dad," I said, my voice clear. "I don't want to destroy them. They did that to themselves." I looked at Atticus. "I just want the boundaries. I want my $60,477 back from Birch Vista, and I want them gone." "That," Atticus replied, "is a given." Archer smiled. "Excellent. The past is settled. The future begins." He took the thick, leather-bound contract, the Northline Partnership, from his case. He uncapped a heavy black fountain pen and signed his name at the bottom with a decisive flourish, Archer Whitmore. He pushed the contract across the table, over the wine stains, to me. "Your turn, partner." Right there, on the ruined Thanksgiving table, surrounded by the wreckage of my old life, I signed my name, Kayla Whitmore. I was no longer just a contractor begging for a seat at the table. I was the head of a $3 million development project. Evelyn watched this. She watched the contract being signed. She watched the pen move. She watched $3 million, a new future, being handed to me. It was the final, unbearable straw. "The pie!" she suddenly shrieked, her voice cracking, a wild, cornered look in her eyes. My pie, my homemade pie, my honor." She was fixated on the one, small, tangible lie left in the room. I looked at her, then I walked to the sideboard. The pie was still there. One slice missing. It was beautiful. $95 of store-bought perfection. I picked up the heavy, ceramic plate. I walked over to Evelyn. She flinched, her hands coming up, as if she thought I would hit her back. I didn't. I held it out to her. "You can keep the pie, Evelyn," I said, my voice soft. "You can have it." I placed the heavy dish in her shaking, uncomprehending hands. "But everything else," I said, "the house, the money, my father, it all goes back to where it belongs." As if summoned by the finality of that statement, the doorbell rang. Atticus's associate, the large man, opened the door. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the porch, their hats in their hands. "Good evening," the lead officer said, his eyes taking in the chaotic scene. "We received a 911 call from a Mrs. Mary Thompson, reporting a domestic assault in progress. The caller and another witness provided video evidence of the assault." Mary stepped forward from the kitchen doorway. "I called, officer. I witnessed an assault. This woman," she pointed directly at Evelyn, "struck this woman," she pointed at me, "in the face, unprovoked." The officer looked at me. He saw the red, swelling, unmistakable handprint on my cheek. He looked at Evelyn, who was standing, frozen, still clutching the pumpkin pie. "Ma'am," the officer said to Evelyn, his voice heavy with a tired, end-of-shift patience, "I need you to put down the pie. We need to take your statement." Evelyn began to wail, a long, thin, hopeless sound, as the officer gently took the pie from her hands and guided her toward the door. The Turo was already in effect. She would not be coming back. The room slowly emptied. Atticus and his team were securing the file box as evidence. Logan and Sierra, now on opposite sides of the room, were being separated, giving conflicting hysterical statements. Evelyn was outside, her world reduced to the flashing blue and red lights on the quiet, suburban street. It was over. My father and I stood in the ruined dining room. Archer was quietly, methodically, putting his papers back in his metal briefcase. The television screen, which had been glowing with Logan's final damning email, flickered. It wasn't my doing. It was the Apple TV's screensaver, cycling through the family photo album Evelyn had curated for her parties. But the last photo in the album, the one she must have uploaded by mistake, wasn't one of hers. It was an old, scanned picture, a photograph from a different lifetime. It was me. I was 8 years old, wearing a yellow hard hat that was far too big for my head. I was grinning, missing a front tooth, and proudly holding a rolled-up blueprint. Standing next to me, his hand on my shoulder, was a younger Archer Whitmore. We were standing on the high steel girders of his first major wind farm. My father stared at the screen. I've never seen that picture." "I sent it to her," Archer said, not looking up from his case. "Last week, a reminder of what she was trying to destroy." He clicked the latches on his case shut. Clack, clack. He looked at me, at the image of the little girl on the screen, and then at the ruined, opulent, deceitful room around us. "You were never meant for places like this, Kayla," he said, his voice quiet. "You belong in places that are built, not in places that pretend to be perfect." I reached up and touched my cheek. The stinging had finally faded to a dull, deep ache. It was a reminder. My father opened the sliding glass door to the back porch. The cold, clean November air rushed in, clearing the smell of perfume and fear and shattered pie. I looked at the television, at the picture of the little girl with the big plans. I took my father's hand, and together, we stepped out onto the porch, leaving the wreckage behind. The bright, hopeful lights of Thanksgiving were shining down on the new solid ground we had just claimed. Thank you all so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop your city or country in the comments below and share your thoughts on Evelyn and Kayla's journey. Do not forget to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you want to help this story reach more people, please hit that hype button to show your support.